Welcome into NFL on 365 Sports. I'm your host, Grayson Grundhoefer, and today we're talking about the New York Jets. We're going to continue our draft class recap. Really excited about this one. The Jets did a fantastic job. Let's talk about it. All right, y'all, so we're talking about the New York Jets. And I got to tell you, if you're a Jets fan, you have to be really, really excited about this class. And it's one of those weird classes where it just goes, man, look at all the superstars, right? I mean, you look up and down, there's a lot of guys that tons of NFL draft analysts said they loved, some guys that I personally really loved and got to see a lot of in college as well. So it's an exciting time, I think, for the Jets. You got Zach Wilson as your quarterback. You're trying to build around him. You've had a lot of draft picks, a lot of draft capital spent, and a good head coach. So now at this point, it's just accumulate talent, and that's exactly what they did. So the Jets, with their first pick of the entire draft, was pick number 4. And this came at a pretty good time. They could have gone pass rusher. They could have gone, wide receiver if they wanted to go really early on a wide receiver. But instead, they went cornerback. And they took Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati, my second favorite cornerback in this class behind Derek Stingley. And this is a guy who just kind of fits a mold, right? So he's 6'3", 190 pounds, very physical on the perimeter. You watch him play. I mean, he is extremely physical, and it led to a lot of pass interference calls on him, a lot of holding calls, and that's something he'll have to adjust to at the next level. But when you watch him play, you just can't help but admire the fact that he plays so hard, and he's just one of those guys that is a true leader because of how gritty he is on the field. I really like the frame. Like I said, 6'3", 190, long arms. That's going to help him a whole lot at the next level. And then the other area that really stands out about him is that he had 3 interceptions as a freshman, 3 interceptions as a sophomore, and 3 interceptions as a junior. This guy was consistent throughout his entire career, had 16 pass breakups. He was always around the football. And guys like that are hard to find. I mean, 9 interceptions in a 3-year career is really, really solid, along with the pass breakups as well. He was on a very good Cincinnati team that, in my opinion, was a lot better because of him. He really allowed them to have talent on the outside, which allowed a lot of their interior defensive linemen and their pass rushers to really thrive because of the coverage that he had on the outside. So he was well worth a top 5 pick. They needed a cornerback. They went and got the second best one in this class, but he has the upside to be the best one in this class. So really like that first draft pick for them, even though I do feel like they maybe could have gotten him slightly later in the top 10. Moving on to their second pick of the first round, Garrett Wilson at pick number 10. And guys, I just can't help but to smile when I talk about Garrett Wilson. This is a guy out of Lake Travis High School who was terrific in high school, goes to college, goes to Ohio State, and the guy thrives immediately. Had some big receptions in college football playoff games as a freshman, had 5 touchdowns as a freshman, which it doesn't count as a breakout year in my mind, his freshman year, but it clearly showed signs of the kind of talent he has, especially when you look at their roster and you go, man, Ohio State's got, 3 NFL receivers every single year that comes out of there. So he quickly ascended to the top of the group. He had 2,200 yards right around during his career at Ohio State, was a guy that scored a lot of touchdowns, was, in my mind, their alpha receiver his final year there, despite the fact that he had, Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba next to him. He really stood out as the top guy. He was my number 1 wide receiver in this class, even ahead of Drake London, Traylon Burks, Jameson Williams. I really, really like him. I think he's a fantastic player. And he's the kind of guy who I think will fit really nicely into their offense and will also provide clarity on whether Zach Wilson is the guy for the future or not. I think Elijah Moore is a solid receiver. He's not Garrett Wilson in my mind. He's just not. He's not as complete as Garrett Wilson is. So I'm really excited about this one. I'm excited for where he takes this offense. And we're going to talk about another guy that they drafted later who kind of brings about this mantra, I think, for the Jets, where it's just talent on offense. How much talent can you add around a quarterback to the point where you feel really good about Zach Wilson thriving? So very, very curious about that. But I think Garrett Wilson is a guy who can be an alpha on the outside, can play the slot, can do a lot of things really well. But his biggest quality that I love is just he's a gamer. And when you turn on the tape, the guy goes up and competes every time the ball is in the air. He can make plays in the open field, and he showed off with his 40 time at the NFL Combine, which impressed people, running sub 4.4. So really, really impressed with Garrett Wilson. Moving on to their third pick of the first round. That's right, third pick of the first round. Really impressive that they were able to gather this many picks in the first round, and they moved up for this one. And I think this is one of those where you looked kind of on draft night, and you saw Jermaine Johnson's name continue to fall throughout the draft. And you just sat there and kind of wondered, when's this guy going to get taken? You know, what's wrong? What's going on here? He played so well at the Senior Bowl, has great length, looks like a guy that a lot of teams would love, but no one really fell in love with him like the Jets did. And the Jets moved up to get him, the defensive end out of Florida State. He started in JUCO ball. Was actually at Indy, CC, which was on Last Chance U, if you watch that. He was on that. Wasn't really featured, but he was a part of that. Then he transferred to Georgia. Things didn't really work out there for his 2 years with the Georgia program. So he moved to Florida State this past year, and I was so impressed with what he did. And really his first year of having proven production, he had 70 tackles, 17.5 tackles for loss, 11.5 sacks. He really was fantastic. He was their best defensive player. I think you could argue their best player overall as well, and really just thrived in that role. He's 6'5", 262 pounds, ran a 4.58 40 time, which, again, that's fantastic for a guy at that size. But the biggest thing that I love, and this is something that you continue to see in the NFL for defensive ends, and it's length, right? That wingspan. This guy has an 83-inch wingspan. I mean, it's just absolutely insane how long he is, and that really will allow him to get off blocks extremely well. I think the question for him is motor and consistency, and also I think the other part you have to ask is, was this 1 year at Florida State a fluke? You know, on a very mediocre team, he kind of got to do whatever he wanted. You know, on a winning football team, is he really going to be able to produce? And against great competition, can he produce at the highest level? So there are questions, but I think overall, this was absolutely worth the risk. If you're a Jets fan, you could get an elite pass rusher, and he has the traits to be one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. And I don't think that's hyperbole. He really has that kind of ability with his length and athleticism. Moving on to round 2, pick 36. This is the last pick we're going to talk, you know, kind of extensively about, but it probably is, to a lot of people, the most fun pick. And this is a guy that I got to see a lot in his college time at Iowa State, and it's Breece Hall. The running back out of Iowa State, a guy who really thrived all 3 of his years at Iowa State, broke out as a true freshman, had over 1,000 total yards and 10 touchdowns. That breakout age is just phenomenal. When you get a guy who just shows up on campus and is automatically one of the best players on the team, that does not happen that often. So I was very impressed by that. His whole career, I mean, it's just insane how many touches this guy had. He had 800 touches during his time at Iowa State, nearly 4,000 yards of total offense, 50 touchdowns. I mean, the guy was just terrific. Everything that he did at Iowa State just exemplified a gamer, a guy who really carried that program, and in my mind got them to the point where, you know, heading into the 2021 season, they were, in many people's eyes, a top 10 team. And I think a big part of it was because of him. Now, they didn't live up to expectations. Not his fault, though. He had a terrific final year with the Cyclones. He's a guy who, when you watch him play, you see 217 pounds. You see a relative athletic score that's higher than Jonathan Taylor and Adrian Peterson. I mean, the speed is evident. The explosiveness is evident. A 40-inch vertical. He ran sub 4.4. I mean, the guy is just a freak. And I think when you put him on this Jets squad and you kind of look at the various ways they're going to attack teams, you look at what they did this past year and you go, Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, Michael Carter. I'm sorry, none of them are Breece Hall. He provides an athletic just ceiling that none of those guys have, along with the ability to be a true power back. Now, I do think Michael Carter will have a role as a pass catcher, but I think if you watch Breece Hall's tape, you can see a clear 3-down running back and a guy who should take over the Jets' backfield year one. Final kind of thoughts on their draft. They drafted a tight end in Jeremy Ruckert out of Ohio State. He's very intriguing. I don't know what's going on with the Jets with tight end. They added Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah to 3-year deals. So don't know what's going on there. They just wanted to add a bunch of tight ends to the roster. Ruckert has some nice upside, though, as a third-round pick. Outside of that, though, I think they just did a great job building this roster with a ton of talent, a ton of guys that I think Jets fans can get really excited about and rally behind. And we're truly going to find out whether Zach Wilson is a true elite quarterback or just a good, solid quarterback. So we'll find that out soon. I give this draft class an A+ for sure. The names alone really stand out, but when you turn on the tape, it just makes you really think, man, this is a team that could compete in a few years, especially if Zach Wilson hits. So that's all for today. That's all for the Jets. I'll have more recaps coming throughout the week, but really excited about this Jets draft class and excited to continue getting things going, recapping many of the NFL draft classes. But for Grayson Grundhoefer, this has been NFL on 365 Sports.